Hello, this is Stuart Downward. This is GG5400 Design and Management of Projects. And in this podcast, I want to introduce the project days that you are going to do on the Malta field trip. The question we're going to ask during the project days is a central question to all the students on the environment course, and that is, what are the challenges and potential solutions to ensure Malta's long-term water security? Water is an important environmental thing to investigate because, frankly, there's very little of it on Malta. Malta relies on desalination to meet over half of its water requirements for the different sectors: agriculture, industry, and the domestic sector. And as Malta's population changes, as agricultural changes, as industrial changes occur, so we need to think carefully about the availability of water for the future. Of course, we also need to throw into the mix the challenges of climate change, which may affect the intensity and the duration of precipitation and the total amount of precipitation that we might get, and patterns of evapotranspiration. So there's a lot to think about here, and what I'm going to do is divide up that central question into 5 study groups. And so what you see here is we've got 5 groups that will investigate a different component of that question. And I'm going to divide you up into groups of no more than 3 people who will investigate those particular themes. So let's go through. Working Group 1 will investigate the disposition and recharge of water in the Maltese environment. Effectively, where is the water? How does the water get there? And what is the rate of recharge? And perhaps how might climate change potentially change those patterns of recharge? So, for example, you can look at the aquifers, you can look at the disposition of water in the aquifers, you can look at evaporation rates, you can look at the variance across the geographies of the islands of Malta. Working Group 2 considers the socio-economic development in water resources. So we want to kind of consider the population changes that we've got on Malta. How are those populations changing? How have they changed? And what are the demands for water? How have those demands perhaps changed with changing population, perhaps with tourism, perhaps with changing industrial, agricultural, domestic demands of water across the islands? Group 3 will investigate water management organisations and water users. So what we're really asking here are, who is responsible for water management? What are their particular roles? And how do we assure the quality and supply of that water to the Maltese in those different sectors? And also a little bit about the water users. Who are the water users, and who takes the different slices of water that are available between the different sectors and in what sort of quantities, and how might those demands be changing historically and into the future? Working Group 4 will investigate desalination. As I've mentioned, desalination makes up about half of the Maltese freshwater supply, and so we need to think carefully about the implications of a desalination-based future in terms of energy, in terms of waste, and the efficiencies of that. Group 5 here, Working Group 5, will consider water conservation. So as an alternative to demand management, can we perhaps conserve the amount of water that we're using, perhaps in the different sectors through efficiencies in those sectors, and bring about a net water saving to maybe reduce our reliance upon highly expensive technologies, for example, like desalination. So in the 3 days that each project group will have, that'll be from the Tuesday, the Wednesday and the Thursday, what you'll do is you'll think carefully about those different aspects, and you'll try to collect primary data that will support those questions. You go out into the field, you'll undertake observations, you'll identify practitioners who you'll interview, you'll perhaps set up focus groups, perhaps design questionnaires. I'll leave it to you and your project groups to think about exactly how you will go about acquiring that data. And we'll have an opportunity to discuss that with the individual groups before you go to Malta and whilst you're in Malta itself. On Thursday, the 11th of April, that's the last Thursday, the penultimate day, you're all going to come together in the afternoon. And what I'm going to ask you all then to do is to hold a forum. And the forum will basically then discuss the central question. We'll return to that central question of water resource and water security. And the idea will be that each of the 5 groups then will then bring to the table their particular findings. And through that discussion, we'll try to contextualize those findings and think of potential water futures that will develop from there. That forum will also give you the sort of ideas to complete your evaluation. And I'll be asking you then to go back to your blogs and to think carefully about your summing up comments based on what you've observed, what you've discussed, what you've evaluated. Let me tell you a little bit about the means that we're going to use to do this. Often with an assessment, we are writing a report at the end of it, but I've chosen a slightly different approach here. I'm going to get you to keep a group-based blog. I'm sure many of you have seen a blog in the past, effectively a diary, a record of observations, ideas, thoughts, evaluations. And the nice thing about a blog as a means of assessment and the means of conducting group-based work is it allows you to do a few things. First of all, it means that everyone in the group can be engaged and contributing to that blog, and it also allows for feedback. It allows for feedback from me and the other project supervisors, so we can dip into the blogs and give you comments and reflections on, what we think about the ideas and thoughts that you're putting down onto paper. It also allows a certain degree of peer reflection, so we'll be encouraging you to take a look at each other's blogs and develop ideas based on what you've discovered from each other in terms of your ideas. So as well as contributing to your own blogs, you can also contribute to others. The other thing about the blog, of course, is it's what we call a dialogic feedback process. It's feedback and developing ideas not as an endpoint, but as a continual process. And I think this is interesting because it means then that by the time you get to your summing up points, you've already taken on board those reflections and those ideas of your earlier points through that feedback that you've received. Advantage of a blog, of course, is also that the group members and the people providing that feedback don't necessarily have to be geographically in the same place. So on this field trip, I'll not be in Malta. I will be in the UK, but I will be following your groups closely by dipping into your blogs, reading your blogs, and providing that feedback. And indeed, in a professional environment, that might be exactly the way you might be working. So you might be working as part of a project team, but actually only a small proportion of the people in that team might actually be in the field. Others may be in the office, and those offices, of course, may be in different places. So it's a virtual environment, a sharing environment where you can share ideas, develop ideas, and your evaluations of what you see. Blogs are also very useful because not only do you have to can you simply put your textual comments, but you can also upload digital comments to those spaces as well. So observations, photographs, videos, audio recordings, web links, they can all go in there and it can develop quite nicely. Let me give you an example of some different blogs from the past. So this was a blog from Malta a few years ago looking at land use change. The blog is in reverse order, so what you see first are the last comments. And you can see each of these blog entries is a relatively short individual blog entry here. They're summarising interviews, for example, Joseph Gauci here from MIPA, the Gaia project, which is a permaculture place. You can see there are inserted photographs, etc. within there. There are web links, YouTube links, for example, and different people in the group have contributed to that. The nice thing, of course, also is, of course, we can then reply. So, great video, team assessors. So you can see different people can get involved with the blog and comment on the blog as we go behind it. Okay, so a variety of different things, reading lists, etc. So this is what we'll be expecting you to do. The environment that we're going to use is a WordPress environment, and I'll be setting you all up with a WordPress blog in the next few days. And so as soon as you're organized into your groups, you can start blogging. And indeed, one of the things we'll encourage you to do is start thinking ahead to some of the sites that you'll go to, the ideas that you'll use in your investigation ahead of the fieldwork. So there's no reason why you can't start blogging prior to arrival in Malta. So you've already got those initial thoughts and ideas down on paper, and that will allow me, of course, to be able to comment and support you and support your groups. So I hope you'll find the blogging environment a very novel and exciting way to work, and one which will be very valuable to you. I'll put all these details up into Canvas, and within the assignments section, we'll talk specifically about the blog environment. I'll put up a post here which will tell you a little bit about the assessment of those blogs, and I'll describe that to you in more detail in the session when I see you on Monday. Thank you.